Testing.
I looked at it and approved it. I did too. Looks very worthy. Chris Gillish wrote it. Did you? Chris Gillish wrote it. Is that right? With the help of Bob Feinberg. But it's pretty much what I say every time I have a design. That's why.
In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act of 1975, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided. If any member has reason to believe this meeting is being held in violation of this act, they should state so at this time. Seeing none, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Mrs. Hutchinson?
Here.
Mr. Murray?
Here.
Mrs. Werner?
Here.
Ms. Hessel?
Here.
Mr. Ledwin?
Here.
Mrs. Notch? Mr. Walsh?
Here.
Mrs. McDade? Mr. Venuto?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, we need a motion to approve the minutes from the June 23rd, 2022 meeting.
So moved.
Motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Ledwin, seconded by Ms. Hessel. Mrs. Werner?
Yes.
Ms. Hessel?
Yes.
Mr. Ledwin?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Venuto?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mrs. Hutchinson?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a resolution to approve, we need a motion for approval. Paul and Nancy Valentine at 1812 Maryland Avenue.
I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Mrs. Werner, seconded by Mr. Walsh. Mr. Walsh?
Abstain?
Mr. Ledwin?
Yes.
Ms. Hessel?
Yes.
Mrs. Werner?
Yes.
Mr. Venuto?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mrs. Hutchinson?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, first application and only applications for Paul and Barbara Gioso, 1502 Belvento Avenue. Come all up, come up. You have to push the button to turn your microphones on. Okay.
Okay. Good evening, Madam Chair.
He's going to swear everybody.
Oh, sorry,
It's okay.
jumped the gun.
Are there new attorneys?
We are not,
It's the homeowners, right?
correct.
If you two would please raise your right hand. I know Mr. Hurlis is our board engineer. He's also going to be sworn in because he may testify.
Okay.
You obviously swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Barbara Gioso. This is my husband, Paul. And as you said, we're the property owners of 1502 Velvento Avenue and the applicants. I'd like to thank you for your time and consideration of our application tonight. Just to give you a little background of our history with Cape May, I've been coming down to the Cape May area since I was born with my parents. My mother's brother lived in the Wildwood Crest area, and we always vacationed here every summer. When I met Paul 35 years ago, I started bringing him down with my family, and he then has also, of course, the natural love of Cape May, because how could you not love it? We vacation down here every summer and have kept that tradition going since our 3 children were born. They also, it's in the peanut gallery, and they also love it. Cape May seemed the obvious and natural choice for us to purchase a home and continue making wonderful memories down here, which is what brings us before you tonight to discuss our application. My husband and I are both engineers, and in addition, my husband is a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. I'll turn it over to him now to discuss the next part.
Okay. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. So our application applies to 1502 Velvento Avenue in the city of Cape May, identified on the tax map as block number 1176.02, lot 1.02, and it's located in the R1 low-density residential district. Through this application, we're seeking variance relief from the design standards pursuant to Chapter 525, Sections 62A1, Sections 57E3, Section 14B2, pertaining to the request for a swimming pool in a front yard, a de minimis increase in lot coverage, and the installation of a 6-foot-high solid fence in a front yard along the New York Avenue side of the property. We've serviced proper notice to the public for this application, and as of this evening, received approval from the Shade Tree Commission, the Public Works Department, and the Fire Department. And as I mentioned, I'll be testifying as the owner of the property and a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. And we're already sworn, so we don't need to be sworn again. It's okay?
So that's okay, we accept you as an expert as well.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, Madam Chair, you accept me as an expert.
And then in this application, you would have seen that a single-family home has already been granted zoning approval by the city and is currently under construction on the subject property, which is fully conforming to the design standards. And in fact, we've prepared an exhibit, and we'll just hold this up. We didn't have an
Hold it
easel,
up,
but
yeah,
we can
there's,
just,
we didn't have an easel.
yeah.
Just hold this.
To show you the difference. Now, these are the exact drawings. I don't know that everybody can see it, but we'll try to rotate it around so you can all see. These are the same drawings that you would have seen in your application. The same plans, they're just together on one board for ease of demonstration. They are namely drawing A1 by Fenwick Architects, dated 4/1/2022, which is on the left-hand side. This was the approved plan that's currently under construction. And the variance plan prepared by Paul Gioso, myself, dated 5/2/2022, is on the right-hand side, and this is the subject of our application. The subject property is part of a subdivision approved by the Planning Board in 2006 and amended in 2015, and is located on Velvento Avenue with frontage, main frontage on Velvento Avenue, but also on New York Avenue. So if you can see, this is our subject property, and the front of the house faces Velvento, and the rear of the house fronts also to the New York Avenue part of the property. And all such lots in this block, 1176.02, have that condition. Which is very unique in Cape May because they are in fact reverse frontage lots, which is, in essence, is to say the house and the lot faces to two streets, opens to two streets, which by ordinance means this lot, our subject lot, has 2 front yards and no rear yards, which actually is a unique situation in Cape May, and it's as I define it, as a reverse frontage on the New York Avenue side, kind of the building south part of the drawing. So this request is seeking approval to locate an in-ground swimming pool in the area of the lot that fronts New York Avenue. And we're proposing to locate the pool in between the house and New York Avenue, which by ordinance is a front yard, but is the effective rear yard of the property. The houses will front onto Velvento.
The pool is shown in blue on that drawing, is it? Okay, because it wasn't on the drawings that I had it. I didn't see it on the handout, but that's the pool. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah, the pool is located in blue here. Yep, there was the original approved plan actually had a patio, and we're proposing to locate the pool in place of the concrete patio. Which, in essence, that changed in basically changing from a concrete patio, which is allowed in a front yard by ordinance, to an in-ground swimming pool, which is not allowed by ordinance, is the essence of our request, to locate the pool in the effective rear yard of the home, but the technical front yard of the home. There are no other changes to the house itself, which is fully conforming. So the size of the house, its height, its location on the lot, the setbacks, the FAR, the parking, even the design of the structure remains unchanged from what was originally approved, and we're not requesting any changes to the structure itself as part of this application. So this exceptional lot condition that has 2 front yards and no rear yard requires the pool to be located at a greater setback than the structure from the street, which, as you can see, is just impossible in this case, thus the hardship. There are no other possible locations really to place a pool on this property, and a typical property wouldn't have this constraint because, in essence, this would be the effective and the technical rear yard of the property, but in this case, by ordinance, it is the front yard of the property. So if this were any typical lot without frontage on both sides, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't need a variance. It would be fully conforming. So as mentioned, we're not proposing any changes to the building setbacks from what was approved already. And in fact, we are proposing to locate the pool 20 feet from the New York Street property line, which is well in excess of the 10-foot typical required setback for accessory structures in a rear yard. So this is the effective rear yard, as we said. Had this been a technical rear yard, the setback would be double what's typically required by ordinance. We're also seeking a variance to install a 6-foot solid fence in the effective rear yard. The New York side of the property is detailed on the drawing, which is on the house side, the building side of the landscape easement, the landscape buffer. And our testimony is that the dense landscaping requirements in the subdivision approval, the openness of the lot, which actually invites for further dense landscaping, the fence will pose no visible hardship to the streetscape, and in fact, over time, will hardly be visible as the landscaping becomes more mature, which I think was the intent of the original development subdivision approval when they approved the landscape easement. The fence can't encroach on the landscape buffer. It will be on the house side of the easement. And it may be worth me spending a little time to explain the landscape easement in a little bit more detail. So a stipulation of the 15-lot subdivision approval required a 10-foot wide, shown in dark green here on both plans, a 10-foot wide landscaping easement in between the New York side, the New York Street property line and our subject property. No vehicular traffic is permitted from the New York Street to our subject property, or in fact, any property along the 1176.02 lots. So effectively, the planning board and the developer were treating this area of the property as a rear yard. And I think the intent of the landscape buffer was, in fact, over time, as the landscape matured, it would, in essence, isolate the residences in that block from the New York streetscape and the neighbors on the other side of the property. Now, I can't testify to the intent of the board or the subdivision designer. I wasn't there at the time.
Our engineer was.
Okay, yeah. Maybe Mr. Hurlis can help me out a little bit soon.
Would you like to hear from that now? Sure. So if you take a look at the resolution 1-13-2015-1, on page 3, subsection D, the resolution talks about how the board essentially provides provided guidance on how this block would be developed. And I agree with the testimony that the applicant has proposed to you, is that they guided future development so that the houses would face Belvento Avenue. So Belvento will be treated as a front yard for the sake of this development. Now, it doesn't absolve them from coming in and getting variances for whatever they're doing, and maybe the board didn't recognize at the time, but, so they created this landscape easement where there's no improvements that are permitted along New York Avenue. So all of the, you can't put a driveway through there, you can't put improvements in there, so everything looks onto Belvento Avenue. So, and the way that our pool ordinance is written is that, you can't have a pool between the face of the structure and the right-of-way. So even if they meet a setback requirement, it's considered a front yard. So in this case, we have two front yards. Belvento Avenue is a front yard, as well as New York Avenue. So if they were to put a shed back there, they would have to come in here for a variance, because it's an accessory structure in the front yard. And the front yard is considered the face of the primary dwelling to the right-of-way. So in this case, the board recognized that this would be an issue, the reverse frontage or double frontage lots. And in this case, they said, and I believe there was residents in attendance that requested and actually helped guide the board into making that decision where they would face Belvento Avenue.
Was that the residents from New York Avenue?
Yes, the residents from New York Avenue preferred that they look at the back of the houses.
So,
The ones that were in attendance, I can't.
so when they were making all these plans, they didn't take into consideration that people would want to put pools in there, so every one of them's going to have to come?
No, they really didn't. That was not discussed at the time. So
Wow.
I guess everyone may have to come before us unless the zoning is changed. But this is one of the issues we have with reverse frontage lots, as well as corner lots.
Oh.
But in this case, this is our second one.
Right.
You may see a pattern of these happen.
Problem, sure.
That's,
Can I ask a question?
Please.
If you're putting the pool in the existing patio, can you explain why the lot coverage has gone up?
Yeah, okay, sure. So to provide for safe access around the pool, you'll notice that there's a impervious paver walkway, I'll call it, around the three sides of the pool that wasn't needed when it's a patio. And that's for safety reasons and for safe access in and out of the pool. Many times if you're accessing from a lawn area, you can trip over the coping and either fall into the pool coping and hit your head. It's a safety issue that we thought was important. And given that we're not changing the structure itself, that was part of our design criteria as we designed the pool and the patio itself.
I guess that's a function of the size of the pool.
right. Is there a way of so we look at overdevelopment a lot. We look at structure, we look at floor area ratio, which controls the massing of the structure. You're fine there. You conform to that. When we look at overdevelopment of the lot, like how intense is the development on the lot, we look at lot coverage. We like to see you try and conform to that. So in your opinion, is there any way that you could mitigate that coverage and become either conforming or closer to conforming?
Yeah, so I would say that in the house construction plans themselves, there's a couple of already mitigation engineering controls, I would say, for things like stormwater runoff, which of course is one of the issues with impervious coverage. So this dwelling will have a state-of-the-art stormwater management system that'll be installed as part of the construction of the home, which involves two 46-foot stone trenches on either side of the house, 2 foot wide by 2 foot deep, that will capture all rainwater runoff from the roof. And it's intended that the runoff, the stormwater structures will also have inlets on top, and that the patio around the pool will be sloped toward the inlet that will basically prevent any kind of runoff to our lawn or to the neighboring New York Avenue side of the street. So that'd be one example of an engineering control intended to prevent or mitigate the de minimis increase in lot coverage. And just to give a sense of the scale of it, it's less than 2%. We're proposing, the limit by ordinance is 30% lot coverage. We're proposing 31.9, so it's a 1.9 increase over the 30%. It's about half the size of a typical parking spot. So we feel it's pretty de minimis. And our testimony is, my professional opinion is, by changing from a patio to a pool, we're actually mitigating stormwater runoff because the pool acts as a stormwater collector in and of itself. We have a pool in our current house at our primary residence in Denville, and when it rains, not only does stormwater help fill the pool up, but that prevents us from, or disallows us from using our hose water. So there's a benefit to the community by turning this from a patio to a pool from a stormwater runoff perspective, and also from a natural water, potable water perspective as well.
I have a quick question. You're 31.9 on the lot coverage. It's 30% that's allowed. So you're 1.9 over. Can you convert that 1.9 to square feet for me?
Oh, it's 178 square feet. I'm sorry, I thought I testified before.
No, that's my calculation
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
That's a pretty sizable number. That's a bedroom, that's more than half a parking spot.
Is
That's-
that a question?
To me, that's not a small number. You know,
I think Craig's question was not so much why the lot coverage doesn't matter, but rather, is there a way that you can put in permeable pavers or something else that will get you down to the appropriate number? Craig, do you have any ideas on
They've
that?
already,
It is-
taken
yeah.
advantage of the patio calculation at 50% being permeable pavers. So there's no real opportunity with the stuff that they provided, like where they've provided walkways or driveways, they've taken advantage of that 50% coverage. So the only way to reduce this, in my opinion, would be to cut portions off the pool patio.
Could you make the pool smaller?
Smaller pool, smaller patio, like those are the types of things that he could do to come in conforming with regards to that. So it's 179 square feet, 78.5, so it's 10 by 18. That area has to be mitigated somewhere.
So your driveway and everything it looks like it has grass in between it. You've already,
Yeah, the design is pretty minimal with regards to everything else on the site. It's the pool size and the patio surround, I think, is where, we've seen creative pool designs where they come in and they don't have any patio surround on one side or two sides or, things like that.
Yeah. The other maybe important things for the board to note is that the FAR, which is another measure of the development of the site and the buildings on the site, was well below the limit. So the FAR limit on this site is 50%. This structure and its other floor area ratio contributors have been approved at 41%. So by that measure, we're not proposing a bedroom here. We're not proposing to increase the first floor to include an extra den, which we could have by design. This is an open area structure. It's a patio. It's a pool. It's not an above-ground structure that will contribute to the floor area ratio on the site. So that's just one other thing I wanted to share with the board as well.
Well, that's just a rough calculation. If you were to take all this off the pool, you would be left with a pool that's 110 square feet, which is not much of a pool, is it, I guess?
It's kind of a big bathtub. Right, yeah. But we did try, from an impervious area perspective, you'll know that there's no paved portions on the property at all. They're all impervious pavers. Aside from the original approved, concrete patio, there's no patio, there's no concrete structures as well. Most of the, 100% calculation to the impervious calculation is from the roof area itself, from the structure itself, again, which is remaining unchanged.
When we had something not long ago involving a pool and lot coverage, what was the percent that was permitted? Wasn't it 40 or something?
It's in a different zone.
I know.
That's
I know.
40,
I'm
yes.
trying to find some distinguishing.
The R1 has our most restrictive lot coverage requirements at 30%.
And the other one was what, R2?
The other ones are R2. So every other district in town is 40% or more. Yeah.
Yep.
what will the fence be made out of? Wood fence or vinyl fence?
I'm sorry?
The fence, the material of the fence, wood or vinyl?
Yeah, we have to work with the homeowners association to, in fact,
Yeah, I was reading that.
reach resolution on that. Our neighbor, this board had heard an application, actually approved the resolution from our neighbor at 1500 Vilvento Avenue, which is our next-door neighbor, which had the exact same condition and a similar request to locate a pool in a front yard, which was approved, I think, at the May meeting. They had requested a 6-foot-high vinyl fence, and the homeowners association requires us to use identical fencing along New York Avenue side. So by definition, that would require us to put a vinyl fence there, but that's not our testimony. Our testimony is we need to work with our neighbors and the homeowners association to decide on what the fence material is, because they also have design guidelines, standards for fencing that are in debate and discussion right now.
I'm gonna try to help you a little more in the lot coverage. Craig, is that easement that's in the back, is that part of their lot that's counted for the percentage of their lot coverage, or do they lose that area?
It's counted towards their lot coverage. It's part of their lot.
The buffer zone is?
What's that?
The buffer zone?
The buffer, it's
It's counted
part of
part
their
of-
property, it's an easement, it's green space. So,
Yeah. But there's no, correct me, Mr. Hurlis, but there's no permitted structures or,
structures, right?
Yeah.
That's why the fence line is on the back side of that, your property, the house side of that easement.
yeah,
So that if you're driving down New York Avenue, that shoulder will be 10-foot wide, all vegetated.
It
And
looks,
the intent is that the plantings there are supposed to grow up and create a buffer along that
it
fence
looks
line.
nice. I think as it grows in, it's gonna, I'm not used to seeing just one side of a drive.
yeah. We would prefer to make the fence invisible as well. I mean, as my wife explained, we just have a love of Cape May, and we love the character of the neighborhoods and the architectural features that the neighborhoods just demonstrate to folks that live here. So a 6-foot-high vinyl fence, although it might be required for safety reasons for the pool, may not be the most attractive fence, we recognize that. But the landscape buffer will in essence make it invisible over time, just as it has it at our home. We have a corner lot at home at our primary residence that has 2 front yards as well, and we've done the same thing. We've had, in essence, a self-created landscape buffer that has made that fence invisible over time, and that's our intent here as well, yeah. But I understand that the board is concerned with lot coverage. Again, in my professional testimony, a pool is a mitigating factor for storm runoff. In addition to the state-of-the-art stormwater collection that we're providing, my professional testimony is that this design would be beneficial to the neighborhood and the community, as opposed to a shed or a bedroom or a detached garage, which in essence would be 100% impervious area that would contribute to stormwater runoff to the neighborhood.
Okay. Craig, do you have any more you want to? Oh, you want to go over your?
Depends on how hard the board wants to push on the lot coverage issue.
Well, I guess,
I don't see where there's going to be any place you can.
My suggestion is, and this would be, compromise with the board and get us closer to conforming, is on the back side, the side closest to New York Avenue, you have, I don't know what the width is there, there's no dimension on it, but that surround on the back side, it looks like 5 by 34. Is it 5 foot, is that a 5-foot surround on the side?
I'm sorry, Mr. Hurlis, where?
On the proposed,
I believe it's 4 feet.
it's 4-foot width?
I believe it's 4 feet, and it's the width and the depth of the pool.
Okay, so 4 foot on each side on that, on the back and 2 sides. So it would be 8, 24 plus 832 times 4. And you already took advantage of the 50%, so that would knock it down 64.
Point 7%.
So we can knock down to 0.6 or 0.7% if you were to just take that
see,
strip off.
you're gonna see, we're gonna have 15 more of these, at least. So it's, it's the size of the pool thing, so
Yeah.
there's not a great reason to make it bigger than the minimum. So I just, I want to have reasons on the record, and we just recently
That's
had
4 feet, that's 4 feet.
one
and
that
this
lot
is
coverage was a big
10
issue,
feet.
installing the pool in the backyard. And that one had mitigating things, this and that, but, to just say, well, you want this size pool, so the lot coverage, I've always felt the way you feel about pool, I don't understand why they count towards lot coverage, although it's been explained to me by my engineer friends. Lot coverage isn't just drainage,
We're
but
gonna go
it's an
through that again.
intensity of use on the lot issue as well, so, I mean, I sympathize, but at the same time, I just wanna make sure we're, I can do the resolutions, and I'm the one who gets the questions later about consistency, so I just gotta make sure we're holding you to, the least possible that lets you have the pool you feel you need, so let's let Craig play with the numbers a bit, and
So if he were to remove that, that would knock the coverage down, proposed coverage down to 31.22%. Still over, we're getting closer.
And just so I understand, you're talking about the bottom ribbon.
Talking about the strip of your patio surround closest to New York Avenue,
The back.
The backside,
the backside.
yep. This, just so I'm clear, this strip here.
Exactly.
well,
If that were a condition of
We
approval,
also have a regulation where, so I tried to look at this a couple different ways. We can't push the pool closer to the structure because
Yep.
we have the 10-foot separation requirement.
yep,
So it's,
well, that's important, because the
Yeah.
other one was within that, so in essence, by complying, by making it the full distance away, they've added lot coverage, there's more lot coverage, so, okay, well, let's write that down.
yeah. Actually, that was in my notes, I
Take
just
away
forgot,
all
I
that.
forgot to mention,
28 square feet.
I forgot to mention that.
Oh, we got there eventually.
Yeah, yeah.
All right,
You will notice that maybe just to put it on the record, you will notice that the concrete patio was 9 feet from the house, but that we need to be 10 foot to the water line, and so we moved the pool further away from the house to conform.
okay, so I just want to explain that, so everybody has that, you know, for when this comes up later. We had some other applications where the pool was kind of squeezed up against the house, and they were seeking the variance, but in this one, by making the pool comply and moving it further away, there's already a patio there, so that's all pervious surface between the pool and the house. So that, but they could move the pool closer and violate the ordinance and comply with lot coverage, but in order to comply, they had to keep it away from the house, so that creates more space between. So that's part of the reason why
Sides, too. That's
there's more
another-
impervious coverage.
That's 4
You understand
feet
that?
times,
Everybody got that? Yep. All right, well, I'm writing it down.
48 square feet on each side, it's another 96 square feet.
it's half of that.
Huh?
It's half of that because it's patio, and they've already taken credit for the 50%. If you're
It's only 50%? Oh, even though it's solid?
It's
per,
Oh, it's pervious,
Craig,
okay.
in your
the
opinion,
pervious pavers.
is it worth the 47 feet or whatever it is you're saving there to have a arguably less safe path around the pool?
I'm making suggestions. I don't know how hard the board, we're gonna see a lot of these in this block. so-
But you all consider that, that's voting stuff, but
Well, safety is important.
We would be willing to do that, maybe on the backside, as Mr. Hurlis suggested. It wouldn't be our preferred option for safety, for that very reason. I don't know that we would be willing to do it on the sides. I think any kind of pool structure is inherently risky in and of itself. And particularly as we have a pool at our house in northern New Jersey, and we want to make it as safe as possible. Access to the water in and out of the pool is typically one of the ways that we try to ensure safe entry and egress from water structures, if someone were to need that.
what we'll do is we'll vote initially as presented, and then the board, you guys can do whatever you want, but the motion I'll recommend to you at the end, whenever, I guess, if you're not done, is to approve it as presented. If you want that change to the pool area around the pool, I'll let everyone vote again, but the first vote will be as presented, if that's okay, unless I'm sure you want to do it a different way.
No.
And then if that is unsuccessful, then maybe the problem is people want to remove that space, and then we'll try other options, but I guess we should first vote and see as presented how it does, and then try something else. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah, I just have one quick
Or you
question.
no, it's not over, you can take as many
okay.
questions as you want, I was just.
In your lot coverage calculation, is the porch and cabana area included in that? because I see that you took the 50% credit for the drive and everything, but that porch and cabana looks like that's pavers also, is it?
The porch and cabana.
It's under the roof?
Yeah,
Oh,
is.
okay.
Yep, it's included in that calculation indeed, yeah. But the porch is under roof, so that would be 100%.
Gotcha.
So we wouldn't be allowed to take the credit for the 50%
Okay.
coverage there, yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions?
I just have a question about precedence. This is unique to this area. This can't be used in other places of Cape May to put pools in the front yard or,
Every application stands on its own, okay? But you do want to strive for consistency, if for no other reason than to be fair. So it's important to look for things that distinguish one application from another as you think and talk about it. That's why we went through some of the stuff about lot coverage, understand, you know, all the factors that are in here. In terms of pools and front yards and backyards, it's not a precedent other than along this whole New York Avenue, it's pretty much all the same. So you're really gonna kind of be hard pressed to,
right, but it's not going to translate throughout
Through the town.
no, everyone to come in their own reasons, own circumstances. It's just that on this one, this was designed to be a backyard from the outset. I mean, that's obvious from the resolution and Craig's testimony. So there aren't many of those in Cape May.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I can't think of any other street that's like that.
Yes.
Maybe there
Michigan
is.
Avenue and Virginia Avenue.
Michigan and Virginia?
They may not have a 10-foot easement with a large hedge intended to separate.
No, they do not.
Correct.
So that's why they did that.
All right, Craig, do you have more you want to tell?
Yeah, let me just breeze through the rest of my review memo, and then we'll turn it over to the public.
Okay. Yeah, rest your arms.
Okay, the latest review memorandum for this application is dated June 8th, 2022. This is an application for variances associated with a pool in the R1 low-density residential district. With regards to completeness, it's a complete application. All the information that was provided meets all the checklist items, so there's no waivers necessary from that. So I'm going to roll right into highlighting the variances that are required. Lot coverage is proposed at 31.9%, where 30% is the maximum permitted in the R1 district. The next variance that's required is dealing with the pool in a front yard, and it's non-conforming with regards to, because it's forward of the face of the structure, so there can be no pools between the face of the structure and the right-of-way that abuts it. So that's the variance for the pool. And the fence, you're not allowed to have 6-foot-high fences in a front yard. So in this case, we're treating it, from a planning perspective, we're treating that as a rear yard. I didn't take issue with that. It actually helps, mitigate any of the so-called nuisances that pools have. So those are the three variances. With regards to the general review comments, I'm not going to go through these all and bore you with these, because these are the same exact ones that they were required to do when the subdivision was created. So I'm just going to globally say these should all be conditions of approval. The applicant has already agreed to these when the original subdivision was approved, and I'm just rehashing those just for. So that's a summary of my report. I believe we did get a fire department review. They had an approval. We got a public works department approval, and we got a shade tree approvals with no conditions or comments. So,
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Craig? Yes.
I have a couple, one observation. I think my concern would be that we're going to get pools all the way down that development, just as sure as can be. So if we decide on a certain percentage, we're going to end up setting precedent.
Are these houses are these custom houses, or are they all kind of built similar?
I can probably give you some guide. So they're being sold to individual developers. And I've reviewed a lot of the plot plans already. I don't think you're going to see pools on every one, because they're eating up their lot coverage with other things.
Yep.
Patios, sheds, detached garages. So if they eat up all their lot coverage on that, this is, I look at the 1%, and I think the board may, based on the discussion, going over by 1 or 2%, if you set that as an example, 1 or 2% is not going to get someone else a pool that has already used up their 30%. That's just my opinion and seeing.
Unless they come in for a variance.
They can come in and
Well, that's
I
what,
can tell you what you guys are going to say.
what I'm saying though, Craig, is that we're setting a certain amount of precedence. We had the pool on the corner lot, now we've got this one, and how many more are we going to have?
But each one is being considered individually.
That's correct, but they're going to come in and say, you gave a variance to so-and-so for such and such. Now, that's just an observation.
Yeah, I agreed with you.
Okay.
I think they should have considered that in the beginning.
Right.
It's currently under.
It's under construction.
Even though each
Foundation's
house is
in.
individual, if the fences by your association are required to be the same, it's going to be a line of white fence down the street. So it's going to look like an alleyway, it's going to be, and I don't know if the neighbors across the street were, when they were looking,
Well, no, it's going to be a 10-foot hedge.
It's going to be a big hedge in
the
front.
hedge, but there'd be a fence behind it.
Behind it, on their side, on the.
Yeah, they're gonna see landscape.
Property owner's side.
So you just see
Nora
landscape.
raises a good point with respect to, because this is in the, all these will be in the front yard.
Correct.
Going down there. And if we say, and they're not supposed to have pools in the front yard,
Right.
right? Okay, so just hypothetically, if we were to say it's okay for this pool to be in the front yard, I think then you're hard pressed to say to somebody else, no, you can't have yours in the front yard. So I think Norm has a,
Or John, the size of the pool for the lot coverage. That's the issue that we're setting precedent.
good point.
Okay. I have two other questions for you.
For us?
For the applicant, yes. I looked through all of the voluminous documents that you presented to us. I didn't see anything in there that talked about the approval by the HOA for the pool, and you're required to have a written approval.
Correct.
So do you have that?
We can't have that yet until this board approves it, because as part of the stipulation of the HOA, the bylaws and covenants and restrictions require us to conform with Cape May ordinance, which of course this does not, which brings us before you today. So they know we're here. They know we're seeking variance relief from this board. They've approved the plan that we've showed you, which was already approved by bylaws and covenants restrictions of the subdivision, but they can't approve the pool because you haven't approved it yet. But they know we're here seeking relief
Okay.
for variance.
And the last item I have, since you all are the engineers, what is the volume of the pool, water volume of the pool by gallons?
We haven't determined the depth, but I can give you a general indication of what it might be,
Really a zoning issue.
if that's appropriate to address in front of the board, or?
I don't know what it has to do with the, I mean.
Talking about
If
water.
you know, great, if you don't, I don't,
I can calculate it for you real quick if you'd wish.
I'd be interested. It's an issue that's going to come before us again, so.
What is, it's not an ordinance yet.
I doubt it'll ever be a zoning issue. I mean, they're not going
I don't think they,
they're not going to set a zoning, like, a requirement that says your pool has to be less than certain gallons. That's more of a city function, if that's policy decision on that end.
But I'm happy, if it helps answer the board member's question, I'm happy to quickly calculate it if you just give me maybe a minute or so. Is that okay? Or,
I
I have a general question for you, Craig.
hold on, he's gonna,
Can I ask my question first?
I know, but the applicant gets to listen to your question, but he's been asked to do
Yeah.
math calculations. He gets to hear you too, so, let him do his math, we're gonna do these calculations for reasons I don't know, let's do that, and then, of course, ask your question.
Well, at my age, I may forget the question.
Right,
how about this? If it's okay with, I'm sorry,
Norm,
Norm, if it's okay.
that's fine.
Maybe
whatever.
we'll let you ask your question first, and then we'll come back.
Go ahead.
I'm trying to make everybody happy here, and it's not working, so. Go ahead.
Okay, it's a quick question. Are pools permitted in the front yard or not, irregardless
Would you
of lot
please
coverage?
speak into the microphone?
I'm sorry.
So-
Are pools permitted in the front yard regardless of lot coverage?
Never.
Pools are never permitted in the front yard. That's a zoning requirement,
And we,
okay?
they're not permitted between the face of the principal structure and the street.
Okay.
So that's considered the front yard. So they're never permitted there. You're not allowed to have a shed there. You're not allowed to have a garage there. They have to be, and no accessory structures can be between the front face of the structure and the street line.
Okay, because I didn't quite
So-
understand here, you
Yeah.
had non-conforming, and you had something less than.
Because the pool was set back necessary distance, it meets the setback, but it doesn't meet we have a standard, a subsection C within that pool requirements that says it can't be between the principal structure's face and the right-of-way.
Okay.
So that's where the variance is being driven for. And this, I think this entire block shows that peculiar case where we have that landscape buffer along there where the planning board said, hey, we don't want this weird street pattern, we don't want one house turned one way, one house the other, we want them all turned towards Velvento, we want no penetrations through that landscape buffer.
He's done his.
He's doing
Okay,
his
I've done my
calculations.
calculations. So my testimony is that a pool of this shape and dimension, 12-foot in depth, 24 feet in length, at a 3.5-foot deep depth, which is typical of a shallow end of a pool, would be approximately 7,540 gallons. I am not testifying that that is going to be the design or depth of this pool, just to be clear, because we haven't designed that yet. I don't know if this will have a deeper end, or it'll be shallower. Some pools are at 3 foot in depth, not a 3.5 foot in depth. But a pool of this dimension, at a 3.5 foot depth, would be 7,540 gallons.
Somewhere between 7,000 and 14,000. All right.
Yeah. Does that answer your question?
That's fine.
Yeah.
I'm just putting it in a data bank for something.
Yeah, there you go. Are there any other questions?
We're going to open it up to the public.
Okay.
Okay.
I think they all,
They're all with us. We're on vacation
with
this
us.
week, so they're all with us.
well, we still have to open it up to the public.
If you please, please talk into the microphone, if you can get to it. Microphone on? Craig, can you,
It's green,
Yes. Members of the board? Yes, of course.
swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so be God?
Yes, I do.
Can you say your name, please spell it?
Yes. Honorable members of the board, I am not a resident of the city of Cape May. May I still ask you, I have one question. Is that all right?
He wants you to state your name.
Jacqueline Gioso.
Well, technically,
Can
you're
I-
not a resident, you can't.
It's really up
Oh,
to,
you go for it, just go ahead.
okay. I'm actually the mother of Mr. Gioso, and I happen to be a municipal attorney up north, up in actually Morris County. I just have one question for you, and I've represented planning boards as well. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Can you hear me? Maybe I can just speak. Can everyone hear me now? My question would be, when the planning board created the subdivision.
If you don't talk to the microphone, you're gonna fit.
Okay, just tell me if you, can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am, when you talk to the
Thank you very much. All right, when the city's planning board created the subdivision, was there any discussion when they were cutting the lots in such a way, this lot in particular, that there was an anomaly to the extent that you would have 2 front yards and no rear yard? Was there any discussion about whether that would be a problem?
Our engineer testified to that, and yes.
I couldn't hear, I'm sorry.
That's okay, that's because I didn't talk to the microphone. Our engineer testified to that. Certain neighbors on New York said that they wanted it to be a backyard, that's why there's a hedgerow, so it is to be treated like a backyard. The pool isn't the problem, the pool's gonna be fine, I think. It's the lot coverage that's the issue. Okay?
Yeah.
All right.
Yes, from a planning perspective, I agree with Rich. This is a special circumstances with regards to, so I think whenever someone comes in, whether it's for a shed or something like that, I think the case is already made that we're treating these as rear yards. Now we're looking at, I think this project either stands or falls on the lot coverage. and that's our control on the lot intent, the development of intensity on the lot. So, you know, that's why I asked, is there something you can mitigate? Like, can we get closer to conforming?
If pools aren't allowed in this area or accessory structures, essentially then you've concluded that the intent was to have no accessory structures on these lots.
Yeah, and I don't think that was ever intended
So
by the planning.
that's a challenging hypothesis for me to write a resolution on, that this board intended not, when the planning board designed these with a 10-foot hedgerow, to have no accessory structures anywhere, which would be the net result, right, Craig?
Yeah, it said.
You couldn't put them in the front, you could them in the back.
I'll read right from, after which, this is talking about me and Mr. Orlando's conversation, after which he discussed houses not facing New York Avenue, with Mr. Hurlis recommending a buffer to provide as a condition regarding those houses, with Mr. Orlando indicating that he provided for that on page 4 of the plan. There was discussion that a condition should be attached to the approval that the easement along New York Avenue should be perpetually maintained as to landscaping to the satisfaction of the board engineer, being 10 foot wide, and should be included in the declaration which Mr. Luchin had previously presented to the board engineer and board attorney for approval prior to this hearing. So, like, there was significant discussion about this. This is what the board came up with as their answer to dealing with the two frontages. Everything was going to be oriented towards Velvento Avenue as a front yard.
I think it's just fair warning to, when these builders are building and designing these properties, that unless they intend their folks never to add accessory structures, they probably shouldn't hit the 30% mark when they design and build it.
Yeah, that,
Take that.
Yeah.
These houses are not built, so they're being custom designed. There's no accessory structures. So if they're gonna build them to 30%, they gotta tell the people they're selling it to that you're gonna need a variance to put in a shed, you're gonna need a variance to put in a pool. Because if they're gonna build them to 30% when they sell them, people are gonna be stuck not being able to put accessory structures. So that's a problem, and that's kind of the lesson to be learned here. Now, this house isn't completely built, and I don't think this patio was built yet, so, you know, I'm not offering opinion.
yeah, I don't,
Vote, that's not my job.
I don't think they're being built as spec houses and being sold that
No,
way.
they're being custom built, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. So you gotta tell people, look, if you're not gonna put a shed in now, you're gonna have to spend a couple $1,000s to go ask for one, and you might
Right.
not get it. That's the gist of this, so tell your neighbors and your friends.
They know, they watched the first hearing.
Yeah. I mean, I think it really comes down to what the board deems as significant increases in coverage or de minimis increases in coverage. That's really what it comes down to. I think we've heard, some questions that might indicate that 178 square feet seems like a lot, but on a 9,400 square foot lot, the board will judge whether it's not. I will say this, though, there has been similar applications in the neighborhood that have requested more coverage than we're requesting here, and those were approved for very similar reasons that we're suggesting. I've done my research by this board.
Really?
There's only
Not in
one
this
that can
district.
work.
I was gonna say, I thought we
Not in the R1, I can tell you that.
only had the pool and this
Right.
There was a resolution that was approved last year at 1620 New York Avenue for a pool that requested 34.8% increase in coverage, above 30, and that was granted approval.
Oh, in New York.
New York Avenue. It's
What is
two-
it? I don't remember, do you have it?
I do.
It's, yep, it's the forest. The forest application on, it's 1620 New York Avenue, I think it was.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, the existing was 36.6, and they reduced it to 34.85.
Correct.
So they reduced their lot coverage.
It was, but it's,
But it's not new construction. We're saying
Yeah, that
it's
was-
very different. I mean, they took a 38 and made it a 36. That's different than building a house at 30 and then asking to go to 32.
Okay.
So I'm just, in fairness, I'm not trying to talk bad about your pool. I mean, I don't vote. I'm just saying that that's not a fair comparison. They reduced their lot coverage in an existing structure. So,
Is there a different pool design that would change anything?
it's a fair question. I just don't know. Yeah, I mean, we'd have to think there was some questions on reducing
Like
the pool.
shape or something would change? Nothing?
Yeah, rectangles are typically the most efficient kind of use of area, but,
You'd end up with a pool that's 110 square feet, according to my calculations.
yeah.
So what made you decide you needed a pool because your original plans just had a patio?
I'm sorry, can you-
What made you decide after submitting plans earlier that you needed a pool or you wanted a pool? Was there something that changed your mind to the
Yeah,
fact that you
we,
wanted a pool
this is-
outside of, your family size?
Yeah, well, that's our primary consideration. This house is really for us as a family to use. We have a pool where we live today.
But originally, you didn't have a pool on the plan, right?
We didn't, no, but we,
And you didn't have any more kids and, right? So I guess my question is, what made you, in that short period of time, decide that now you needed a pool where maybe a month or 2 months prior to, you didn't?
yeah. I think a pool was probably always in consideration in our minds. It was just a matter of doing the research.
But it wasn't in the plans.
It wasn't, no, but I think we wanted to.
Now, was,
There were plans submitted for compliance so that, and this is not just in their case, you can notice there's many
Yeah.
foundation work going in there. Many of them were submitted so that they could beat the pile driving moratorium, so that they get foundations in before the summer moratorium on pile driving happened. So, and then with the intent of them coming back to, if they needed variances or not.
The city ordinance does not permit foundations for piles to be driven after Memorial Day. So if you miss that window when you're constructing a new house, you have to wait until after Labor Day to start. So maybe Mr. King, I don't know where that
think
leaves us here too.
Leaves us, I think it's time to vote.
Can you explain what you were saying earlier, suggesting earlier about the double vote and where that might leave us?
Yeah. I think the first vote, I think, to be done is a vote as submitted. And if that's approved, then we don't need to do anything else. If that's rejected, then I think we should vote on the pool in the front yard and the 6-foot fence, and then vote on the lot coverage. And if they don't get the lot coverage, then they can build a pool with a fence, but they just can't exceed the lot coverage. So they'll have to figure it out in terms of their patio or whatever. Or you can grant it as it is. I'm not taking, there is distinguishing factors in terms of the distance of the pool and the backyard and all that stuff. Although I did think the house and the pool, I thought the house and the patio were already in existence and they were just adding a pool where a patio existed. But it sounds like they're kind of all in progress. But I'll work with either one. But you're right. I mean, once you do 32%, it's going to be hard as you go down the line to not do it. But it also might not be a tragedy. I mean, like you know how I feel about pools. I mean, one of the main motivators for lot coverage is impervious coverage. That's why they could put pavers all over the place, and if they're pervious, they get 50% break. So it really is substantially designed for drainage and not so much intensity, but that is a factor. So I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying that a 2% with a modern drainage system newly installed, is not and it's not arbitrary and capricious to grant that, okay? So there's some stuff here. They also are keeping the pool distance from the house appropriately, and that's creating more impervious coverage to get to it. So, there's some stuff to work with there, but, you guys vote. I'm not a voter. I don't have to vote.
Rich, I have a question for you.
Yes.
The way you framed that, it's either we vote for it with the exceeding the lot coverage, or we vote for it to meet the lot coverage, which doesn't allow for what the applicant has at least agreed to is a compromise or a middle of the road.
Well, that's correct.
So what I'm asking you for is how can you frame your,
Well, I can frame it 3 different ways, but the board also has to decide if gaining 0.6% is worth having a less safe path around the pool. Because presumably some engineer thought 4 feet was the safer thing, or he would have done 3. So, I mean, you do whatever you want. I'm just reminding you of that.
Will you repeat that, please?
Sure. Why don't we do it this way? Okay? We'll vote on the fence. We'll vote on the pool in the front yard. And then we'll vote on the lot coverage. And we'll start with as proposed, then we'll do the middle, and then we'll do none. And if whichever one hits first, we don't have to do the other ones. Get it?
Correct.
The first motion I recommend being made is a motion to grant the variance for the fence as requested by the applicant for the 6-foot fence that's going to be behind the hedgerow, consistent with the other properties that are likely to be along New York. So this is the motion for a variance for the fence for the reasons stated by the applicant with the conditions outlined by the board engineer. That's the motion I recommend being made first. If anybody wants to make that motion.
So moved.
I'm sorry, Mr. King, can I ask a question? Am I permitted?
Usually not after, the motion has been made, it's just me talking, so it's fine, go ahead.
Okay, so is the motion to split this into 3
Yes,
votes, 1 for each variance?
yes. And then the third one gets 3 choices.
Can we have a moment? Or did that pass?
I think this is what you want.
This is what you want.
Okay.
Yeah, you want,
This is, because.
We're gonna make sure you get a pool, then we're gonna worry about lot coverage
You can do a
last.
6-foot fence in the backyard, so that variance is taken care of.
Okay,
Like, that-
okay, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Okay? So the first motion is for the fence. Does anyone want to move?
so moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Mr. Ledwin, seconded by Mrs. Werner. Mr. Walsh?
No.
Mr. Ledwin?
Yes.
Ms. Hessel?
Yes.
Mrs. Werner?
Yes.
Mr. Venuto?
Yes.
Mr. Mary?
No.
Mrs. Hutchinson?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. The next motion is for a pool in the front yard. Craig, is that also, that variance for the front yard, is that also if the pool goes in the front yard, do we still need to give him a variance for the distance?
I used it interchangeably. It says that it can't be in the front yard. They're slightly forward of the front yard setback, so technically it ticks off two things.
So this is a vote, the next motion I recommend being made is a variance to allow the pool in the location proposed by the applicant, and right now we're just talking about the pool, not the coverage issue.
A pool in the front yard.
Yes.
All right, I'll make that motion as articulated by our counsel.
Can we get a second?
Second.
Is that Mr. Venuto?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Werner?
Yes.
Ms. Hessel?
Yes.
Mr. Ledwin?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
No.
Mr. Venuto?
Yes.
Mr. Mary?
No.
Mrs. Hutchinson?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, the next vote is for the pavement around the pool as proposed by, let me, hold on.
It's lot
It
coverage.
is lot coverage, a variance for lot coverage with the construction being as proposed by the applicant. So it would be the 31.9%. So it's a motion to grant lot coverage at 31.9%. Does anybody want to?
Make a motion. Can I make a motion?
They're going to ask for the motion. Sure.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mrs. Hutchinson, seconded by Mr. Murray. Mr. Walsh?
No.
Mr. Ledwin?
No.
Ms. Hessel?
Yes.
Mrs. Werner?
No.
Mr. Venuto?
No.
Mr. Murray?
No.
Mrs. Hutchinson?
I have mixed emotions about this. And we're a board where people come to ask for relief. I think the applicant has done a lot of work to make this de minimis and just a safe pool. So I'm going to vote yes.
Okay.
Okay, that did not pass, so we'll move to the middle ground, which is to mitigate the coverage as much as can reasonably be safe by putting a 3-foot strip instead of a 4-foot strip along the length of the pool in the rear, which brings the.
No, we talked about eliminating the whole thing. The whole thing.
Removing the back
eliminating that whole thing.
So it'd be a patio surround on 3 sides instead of the 4th one closest to New York Avenue.
Okay, what percent does that bring that to, Craig,
That
approximately?
brings it down to 31.2%.
Okay, so this would be a lot coverage variance at 31.2%. Now, I just want to be clear about something with the board, so you know when you vote. If they find another way to rework the other parts of their patio that gives them 31.2%, and they could put that strip around that, does anybody care? I mean, we're going to vote for 31.2%. How they achieve that is kind of up to them, right?
Yeah. I was just trying to come up with a solution that was palatable to the board and the applicant.
All right, so the vote's 31.2%, but I just want to prepare everyone, in theory, maybe they find something on the patio that they can reduce, eliminate and work it so that they're at 31.2, but still have that area over there, then it's same lot coverage, okay? So someone said that on the record, I don't want to. So this motion is for 31.2% lot coverage variance.
I have a question for you, Rich. Who's the determinant on whether or not what they do is appropriate? Because it's
They have to
obviously,
do compliance plans with Craig, like they always do, and Craig will do the calculation.
so Craig's going to be
And the
the,
zoning officer, we both look at it. 2 sets of eyes.
I'm sorry, before we go any further, I'm a little lost in this. We're going to vote now to allow the lot coverage to be, how much?
It's 31.2, which is.
Oh, it's at 31.9.
It's reduced
It
because
was
they took that
31.9.
strip off.
Right.
But now Craig's estimated that they remove that strip off the back of the pool so that it can be reached on 3 sides by the paving. It brings it down to 31.2, which seems to be the minimum number that they can do, but still have 3 sides of it with the paving around it. It won't have the 4th side. What I was pointing at is they may find other ways to get it down to 31.2, but 31.2 seems to be the number that they could build this without having the strip on the other, if they take the strip out on the other side.
So no matter what the design configurations are, we're voting on 31.2% lot coverage. We're voting that we are going to allow them to exceed the 30% lot coverage by 1.2%.
Yes, sir.
Right? Okay.
Correct, sir.
All right, well, I understand.
Can you make that motion then, if you understand?
Now that I understand it, I will make the motion as articulated by our counsel.
Need a second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Murray, seconded by Ms. Hessel. Mrs. Werner?
I'll say yes.
Ms. Hessel?
Yes.
Mr. Levin?
yes.
Mr. Walsh?
No.
Mr. Venuto?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
I'm voting no. Again, you might call it a de minimis increase over, but there's a 30% requirement for a reason, okay? And that's what the planning board said. And if we keep encroaching on the excess of that by a little bit at a time, I think we are defeating one of the purposes, or maybe multiple purposes, of the zoning code. So I think that, to allow anything above the articulated lot coverage, I think would be a mistake on our part. And I don't think it would be a sound decision to make that's with the underlying facts that we have. So I'm voting no.
Mrs. Hutchinson?
Yes.
Okay, that passed 4-3. So what you have is a variance for the fence, a variance for the pool, and your lot coverage is 31.2.
5-2.
What?
5-2.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I put yours down as a no. There you go.
They passed.
All right, thank you.
You revise the plans, comply with the 31.22%, 31.2%, submit the plans to me for compliance review. Okay? If you have questions, you can contact Karen or myself.
Okay, welcome.
Before we adjourn, just for the board, I just wanted to report back. I did talk to Alex Calder, who's the fire chief, and about reviews, and he is very, very articulate about his reviews, and he does a very good job. He's convinced me, so just, to give us comfort that when he signs these sheets, he has actually looked at all the drawings.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Yes.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
It's the standard to apply when we get an appeal for HPC. We'll talk about it when we get an appeal from HPC.